Okay, so welcome to week 8. This week we're going to focus on transaction value and transaction frequency and average transaction value. Again, just quickly, I'd like to summarize the 12-week program and then where we are at the moment. So for weeks 1 and 2, we looked at the key business growth drivers, focusing on the small incremental gains. Weeks 3 to 9, we go into much more detail to give you practical, real-world, low and no cost things you can do to improve your business. And these were covering quick win cash, which relates to the opportunities within your overheads, improving cash flow, the fastest way to improve your bank balance and your stress levels. Then we explored strategies to improve gross margins. We looked to plug the leaky bucket by improving customer retention, and now we've arrived here. We've looked at working to upsell, cross-sell, to better serve our customers' needs and to sell more to existing customers. For week 8, we'll look at the strategies to increase the number of transactions and transaction value. We'll then explore new customer acquisition, and you'll be stunned to discover just how much growth potential exists without the need to acquire new customers. Once we get to know how to grow our business, we need to know exactly by how much and by when, because we need to know that grow that number to give us the lifestyle we desire. Armed with a target in terms of exit valuation and timescale, we need to know what goes into preparing for exit, and it's a lot more than people appreciate. Finally, once the core structure is in place, we need the detailed plan, detailed 3-way forecast covering profit, loss, cash flow, and the balance sheet in order to track and record your progress as you go forward. Remember, whatever your goals, you need to be clear on what you're trying to achieve and by when, because a goal without a timescale is simply a wish. We need to be mindful that survival is not success, and the odds are stacked against us. For those who do not have a very robust plan, the chances of success are all but zero. If your business is destined to be part of your estate and your funding plans for the future retirement, gambling on a 1 in 2,222 is not smart. Achieving your personal and business goals requires planning and process. Again, we also highlighted the fact that we must focus on the lead indicators, the drivers of success, because if we only focus on the lag indicators, which are your sales, profit, cash in the bank, effective management control is impossible. You can only control the lead indicators that drive success, and to do that, you need to know what they are, measure them, take action to move and improve the key drivers. Set yourself targets and monitor progress over time. Also remember, as of 2002, the British cycling team had only won 1 gold medal in 67 years. In 2008, at the Beijing Olympics, the British team won 7 out of 10 gold medals and repeated that success in London 4 years later. The team then went on to win 3 out of 4 of the recent Tour de France events. And how do they achieve it? By breaking down everything that goes into cycling and finding ways to make small 1% marginal gains to achieve an overall increase in performance. What worked well for the British cycling team will work for you. These webinars are to educate you on small, easy, but highly effective ways to increase your business performance by finding and implementing small ways to make those 1% marginal gains. And with that, success will look after itself. So in business, whilst your business will have more, these are the 7 business growth drivers, and they're by and large universal. So margin, overheads, new customer acquisition, customer retention, transaction value, purchase frequency, and the odd one out, because it's not a growth driver, the cash flow. It's critical because if you run out of cash, there is no business. As we've seen, we've already introduced Alex and KPI software and his planned dividends with 80k profit, up 33% per year. Alex and the family are looking forward to paying themselves the 40k dividends. They're excited at the prospect of the holiday in the sun, moving to a larger house, or a whole new wardrobe of clothes to wear. However, there was a problem, and it's down to cash flow. Despite the increase in profit, the bank is overdrawn by £53,000. So Alex has to explain to the family there's no holiday this year, the house move is put on hold, and existing clothes will have to last a little bit longer. But never mind, because it'll be better next year. But again, will it? Once you have your 5-year goals and you've mapped your future at a high level, it makes sense to break down your targets. So where I want to be in 5 years can then be articulated as where do I want to be this time next year? then the year can be broken down into quarters, months, or quarters and weeks as a regular 90-day planning cycle. Remember to focus on breaking down the work into manageable chunks to make your life easier. So back to today, having looked at cash flow, margin rate, and customer attrition, let's continue to focus on our existing customers and the scope to sell more before thinking about new customer acquisition, which we'll cover next week. So last week was the same homework again. So we asked you to do a little bit to get the grey matter moving in the right direction. So how do you categorize your customers? Because not all customers are the same. However, if you do it, you almost certainly need a way to assess and measure your customers, to identify and understand their behavior better, and more to the point, what you could potentially do to influence their behavior in the right direction, in this case, to solve more of their problems and issues, or to help them realize more of their dreams by purchasing more from you and more frequently. Do you know the number of transactions per customer or segment? And finally, do you know the average transaction values per customer or segment this year, last year, and do you have a target for the future? This is all something we can help you with, so please contact us for more information. Today, we're going to continue looking at the two growth drivers we started last week, and those are transaction value and purchase frequency. We covered this slightly last week, but we'll go into a little bit more detail now. If you followed us each week, you should be getting used to seeing the numbers and how they flip in the wrong direction when they're red and flipping in the right direction when they're green. So as we're going to see as they pop up, there's a lot of red items, which means Alex's business is underperforming. As I mentioned, today we're going to start looking and focusing at the two areas, which are transaction value and the frequency. Putting all that information into a table, we have already looked at cash flow, stock, creditors, debtors. We also looked at overheads, gross margin, and customer retention. Next, we're going to look at transactions and their value. Do you know how many times you transacted with your customers last year? Do you know what your average transaction value was last year? These are two extremely important metrics because only by knowing what they are, setting targets for improvement, and regularly measuring progress against plan, can you be sure you're moving in the right direction? So looking at Alex's figures in KPI software last year versus this year, we can see that the movement has been good and bad. So the key question, if we're going to look to influence those business drivers to make an improvement, is what are they going to be next year? As we know, without change, we can assume another 219 transactions and a further £12.60 reduction in value per transaction. We took a brief look at Alex's management pack last week. You should now be able to identify lead indicators and compare them with lag indicators. Sales is clearly a lag indicator or an output, whereas the number of transactions and the average value per transaction are lead indicators. So in order to improve sales, you should not be looking at the output. You need to monitor and seek control of the input drivers. Let's have a look at the sales impact. We know that sales are more or less static. So at first pass, you could conclude that this year and last year were more or less identical. But as you can see, by looking at the inputs rather than the outputs, we can see that this year and last year were very different. But what about the impact on sales? Knowing the average value per transaction, we can calculate the total volume of additional sales Alex has enjoyed as a result of increasing the number of transactions. It should have delivered £50,300 is an increase in sales, which is a 5% increase in total revenue. But due to the £12.60 reduction in average transactions, the value has written off all of those gains, and it's cost Alex and KPI software £52,100. The difference between those two figures is the £2,000 reduction you can see. So now we know where Alex needs to focus attention. What is happening in your business, and what would have happened if Alex had been focusing on increasing the average transaction value every month? The chances are the £12 reduction could have been reversed to a £12 increase, and sales would have jumped forward by 10%. So let's have a look what we could do to make that happen. Last week, we looked at this list, which is a simple process from start to finish between gap analysis to the plan of action. So we started with know your numbers, understand each area of your business so you can make better decisions. Understand attrition, what's the impact of the lost customer? Set targets for improved customer retention. How can we avoid losing customers? Selling more to existing customers. Easy sales points to those already using your services. Plug in the gaps, removing those zero balances, providing services to all. Fulfilling unmet requirements, so listening to customers and identifying the needs of them. Understand the gap that remains, building your forecast, and finally, communicate. All of this must be set in place before we focus on new customer acquisition. You'll begin to notice that the actions being recommended are the same as those designed to move other business growth drivers. That is a good thing, because if you can make one change that impacts more than one growth driver, you'll get an even greater impact. So it's important to map actions to all of the related growth drivers. So if you've not already started to take action on increasing prices, why not? We covered this 3 weeks ago, and in all probability, it should be your number one must-do task. But if you need help to convert your good intentions into actions, please talk to us because we can help. Increasing prices is not only the fastest way to increase your gross profit margin and your cash position, it is also the fastest, easiest way to increase the average transaction value. So that's a win-win. In week 5, we looked at this information and saw that by increasing prices, Alex increased his transaction value, and that's had a dramatic impact on his profit. As we've not had to do anything to increase prices, the overheads are unchanged at £271,000, which means the profit impact is up by £50,000. I know this is repetition, but if a client asks for a cash discount, do something else to win them over. What can you do for that customer that will value? What you do for that customer will value that does not bleed your bank balance, or at least trade concessions to win better deals. If we need a reminder of how important this is, remember our example of the London Olympics 2012 as an example of a business not offering many discounts. So the tickets cost between £20 and 12p and £2,012. There were discounts for children under 16 and seniors only. No other discounts were offered. If venues were not filled, there were no discounts. There was a total focus on the value. The original budget for London 2012 was to make sales of 376 million, whereas they actually achieved sales of 660 million. And that was more than the sales for Sydney 2000, Athens 2004, and Beijing 2008 combined. After we've increased prices, hopefully you are already working on your gap analysis to start the strategic planning around your cross-selling and upselling objectives. How are you getting on with brainstorming logical add-ons and the script your team should be using at the point of sale to increase the margin and, of course, the transaction value and the number of items purchased? Again, if you need help with this, let us know because we can help. If you're in retail, trading online, you can combine a script with some high visibility, hopefully high margin extras that are likely to tempt buyers to buy more. Have you ever been persuaded to purchase more than you planned to benefit from quantity and or bulk purchase incentives? This could be an increase in the purchase size at point of sale to take advantage of free delivery, or an incentive to move to a subscription model whereby you pay monthly. These arrangements are known as TFN, which is till further notice. And if you recall, when we discussed overheads, we all do it. We sign up thinking it's a great deal, only to discover later that we're potentially paying for things we no longer use. I'm not suggesting you get your customers to pay for things they don't use, but by moving to a recurring income or a subscription model, allowing clients to spread the payment over a period, often paying in advance for services they have yet to use, your cash flow improves. You increase your transaction values and purchase frequency. You also ease stress levels by having a more predictable revenue projection based on known recurring income and a smaller gap to plug with new sales. But better than that, you'll dramatically increase the potential value and saleability of your business. We'll go into that more in week 11. The last of these is where there is a massive potential. If you only offer one price or option, you are encouraging your customers to shop around to establish that there's a better option elsewhere. If you give them 3 options, then a few things happen. Firstly, they're presented with 3 options, not one, which boil down to buy from you, buy from you, buy from you. So chances are they will not feel the need to get an alternative supplier into play. Again, this is repetition, but present your highest price first because it anchors the price in the customer's subconscious, such as any prices presented subsequently appear inexpensive by comparison. Also bear in mind, most people instinctively go for the middle of 3 options, which immediately increases your average transaction value. And some people always want the best. And as we instinctively assume the most expensive is the best, a certain proportion of our customers will inevitably choose to take the biggest ticket item. So this could be the gold package, which in turn increases your average order value. Remember, we're only looking for small incremental gains. They don't need to be huge because all the little changes compound to make a huge difference. And they make a huge difference to long-term growth, profitability of the business. Remember the example of the bed company. They used to always include delivery free of charge. They did not believe they could charge for delivery. With a bit of persuasion, they agreed to add 3 delivery options. So option A was to deliver, carry up to the bedroom, assemble and remove the old bed. Option B was to deliver, carry up to the bedroom and remove the old bed. And option C was to deliver only and remove the old bed. Now, 100% of customers chose one or the other of the 3 delivery options. And what did that do for average order values? We already know that communication is critical, but we cannot overstate the importance. We all live in the here and now, influenced by our recent experiences. So make sure your customer experiences an interaction with you on a regular basis, reminding them you are there and giving them an incentive to interact with you. This will increase the chances of your customer coming back to you rather than drifting off to do business with a competitor, and it will increase the chances of them purchasing more and more frequently. The more personal and targeted you make the communications, the better. And a tip top, the headline or the subject line is critical. Don't call it your monthly newsletter. If you want your customer to open your communications, you have to make the subject line and content interesting. Make it relevant and compelling, not just another sales brochure that will have completely the wrong effect. Keeping your customers engaged clearly has benefits in terms of increasing purchase and frequency and value. Anyone who is not very engaged and is giving you negative feedback is likely damaging your brand. If you don't keep them happy, they will sabotage your business. Only those that are satisfied will remain engaged and loyal. You have to choose the activities you and your team are going to choose to focus on and be mindful of how this can positively impact the business. Looked at another way, how neglecting them could have an adverse effect on your business. Some more strategies to think about. What can you do to position yourself as being more exclusive or upmarket? Anything you can do to carve out a position as being better or more exclusive than your customers or competitors will win you loyalty and higher transaction values. If you want examples, Apple's products sell for much more than the competitive products, like for like, but they have very similar costs, hence a much higher profit margin. That partly explains why Apple are sitting on a cash mountain greater than the entire GDP of Denmark. The closer you can get to your customers, understanding and solving more of their problems, or at least offering them more options and services that solve their problems, not only will they become more loyal, so why go elsewhere unless you give them a good reason to, they will also purchase in greater volume and are likely to be happy. and they'll be happy to pay a price premium for superior service and availability. How many payment options do you provide for customers? Can they pay up front? Can they pay in installments? Ideally on a monthly subscription model? Do you accept all commonly used payment methods, cash, online, payment over the phone, standing order, direct debits? Contrary to belief, direct debit is now quick and easy to set up, with nothing like the hurdles that were in place a few years ago. So if you need any help with setting any of the various payment methods, do speak to us and we'll point you in the right direction. Finally, WAMISH, which stands for Why Are You Making It So Hard? Look at your purchase process. From your customer's perspective, are you set up to make your life easy at the expense of making it hard for your customers? All too often, we make seemingly simple improvements to help streamline systems and processes at the expense of making it difficult for customers. Can your customers contact you using a live chat when they need to? Is your website, email address, and contact telephone number clearly published on all company correspondence? When someone calls, are they answered by a real person, or are they invited to fight their way through an auto attendant? All of these things will impact the customer experience, and anything that makes their life harder than it needs to be will be costing you sales and potentially negatively impacting both volume and frequency. Have you asked your customers what they feel they could do to improve their experience? Do you and your team have this objective as a standing item on regular meetings? If not, then maybe this is the easiest way to start. To continue that checklist, set targets for improvements over time. So make a scoreboard and as highly visible as possible for all to see. Just go back to some numbers here. So we looked at this last week. We can see here the number of transactions by customer. Why do some purchase more than others? And what could you do to influence the frequency of the purchase? Which customers do we want to improve and how can we do that? Do be aware, some sales teams use discounts to achieve this, so we need to look at the average spend too. We need to track, report, and review the average spend by customer. What could you do to increase it? There are some huge variations in the average transaction value, as you can see here. Again, what can we learn from this? What differentiates one customer from another? Clearly, you would look at this information with a breakdown as to which products and services they currently purchase. And as a result of the process, you will inevitably have a list of customers to speak to and a note of exactly what you want to talk about. If a business does not do business via one-to-one discussion with clients, the principles still stand. This informs your communication strategy and objectives in terms of segmenting your customers and sending targeted messages to specific groups to increase transactions and/or transaction value. So keep asking these questions. What can we do to increase the transaction numbers? What can we do to increase the average transaction value? Also, make your team responsible and create incentives. The numbers are their responsibility, so link the results back to the scoreboard I mentioned earlier. Deliver a consistent customer experience. Check your systems and processes are working. For example, the implementation of a secret shopper could help to find areas of concern or change. And finally, offer guarantees to customers. Looking back at the figures from earlier, what do you believe would be a good target for next year? As per previous weeks, we're going to say 4% to be consistent. We've not looked at the impact of making small improvements for a while, so let's see what that 4% looks like. And at this stage, forgive me, as it will get a little bit more complex. Taking Alex and KPI software, let's look at the input drivers for revenue. So the four items were new customers acquired, customers retained, average numbers of transactions, and the average transaction cost. We can see in this case that because KPI software are not acquiring enough customers to replace those they're losing. Without change, this does not result in the year being the same as last year. It's going backwards, with the total customer numbers down by 3.8%. We then need to factor in the number of purchases each customer will make and the average transaction value. If these remain the same next year, we can see that rather than standing still, Alex will see revenue going down from just over 1 million to £962,000, which is also down by nearly 4% year on year. This is driven by 7 fewer total customers, which in turn reduces the number of transactions by 165. We need to work on moving the input drivers in the right direction. Over the last couple of weeks, we've looked at a retention, average transaction value, and average number of transactions per customer. We established that we believe it would be relatively straightforward with a bit of focus to improve retention by 4%, which is back to where we were the year before. So let's look at what that would do. Then we can add in the impact of improving the transaction value and then the transaction frequency. So our start point, to be clear, our do nothing scenario, we'll see revenue dip by nearly £40,000. We can see here that simply by focusing on one thing, which is improving client satisfaction, by getting feedback and acting on it, improving communications and engagement, and getting retention back to where it was last year, that it's sufficient to offset the imbalance in terms of the customer retention and the customer acquisition. We can now see a 40k positive revenue change from negative 38 to positive 2. The big message is standing still is not an option. Now let's look at what a 4% increase in the average number of transactions would look like. So whether the result of increasing prices or as a result of one or other strategies we've discussed, we can see here the impact of a 4% increase in the average number of transactions. Revenue is now moving in the right direction. So if we now look at what a 4% increase in the average transaction value looks like, and just by making those small improvements without acquiring any new customers, we can see revenue is up by a healthy 8.4% year on year. So to complete the picture, let's now add in the improvements we've already discussed. A 4% increase in gross margin and a 4% reduction in overheads, all of which look likely to be highly achievable. With the 8.4% increase in revenue, which was 1.001 million to 1.084 million, driven by retention, transaction number and transaction value, added to the improvement in gross margin and trimmed overheads, the bottom line result shows a dramatic improvement in net profit and hence Alex's scope to pay a very healthy dividend. Shall we check the bank balance to make sure we can pay that potential 100k dividends? Despite last year's disappointment and the pain and anguish caused by the lack of cash, the 53k overdraft has been transformed, improving by more than £190,000 to a positive 138k. By paying the 100k dividend, it would still leave a healthy reserve in the bank, not to mention the reduced bank charges. And all of this without looking at customer acquisition. So having explored the first 6 business growth drivers, new customer acquisition comes next week. In the meantime, are there any questions? And I do understand that was quite complex, but I can send out some information. And if you have any queries, either do let me know now or I can email out some bits and pieces.
David, thank you. That was amazing.
Thank you.
It was very, very interesting, even for me, which actually I'm in the property business. So the only one that applied to me was increase my prices, which I already tried to do. But I have to be it is quite sensible to COVID. So obviously you're talking about people's roof. So it's a bit more complex in there. But but it's something. So what would you recommend, for instance, other than focusing on reduction, it's not from today, but so far what I've taken is reduce your overheads, reduce your running costs as much as possible, and then obviously try to keep as many customers, which I do, because that's something that is very good, and increase the prices. What do you think? I mean, if you look at my business, because it's so different to the transactional model, what else do you think that I could just do based on what you just said today?
I would have to have a look exactly at your figures because I don't know what's there. But yeah, I think we're kind of going into the easy options, which is, yeah, like you've said, it's to look at reducing the costs, increasing the prices, because those are going to change things simply. I think with yours, it is a little bit more complex. So we'd have to, I know we've looked at some of your figures before. I suppose we'd have to drill into that and sit down rather than try and explain it here. But
Raquel,
yeah, I think it definitely would be something that we'd have to talk about afterwards.
Raquel,
Cliff
have you ever spoken to any of your customers, asking them what else they would like from you, what else you could provide, just to get their feedback? Or sometimes by having just a very open chat with your clients, they could say, actually, I could do with X, Y, Z, and that's something that you may not have thought about or have be able to offer, but by thinking about it, you could potentially provide those offerings and then obviously increase the number of services or products that you provide. Have you ever spoken to any of them?
There is a few things, not to them directly, but yes, to other brainstorming with other services and other providers, and also just looking at a similar industry, which is the short-term accommodation model. Then there is a lot of little things that I give to my customers because that's how I give. I always surpass their expectations, but all my competitors are charging for all of those small details, like giving them a welcoming pack with food, bread, giving them Christmas hampers, making sure that they have travel cards and stuff like that. So yeah, there is potentially things that I could not give and then just charge for it. But I just think that at the end of the day, there's so much competition out there that you have to stand out somehow. And in my case, I stand out by the service I provide, the high quality. So that's why. But yeah, it's a great idea, Cliff. I'll go back to them and then see, okay, what else could I have done? Especially to the ones which are living, I think, because it's easier that they tell me so I can implement on the new ones.
But yeah, I found customers are a great source of new ideas that sometimes you've never ever thought about. So I would just have a chat to them, see what they say, and you never know, a golden nugget may come from one of those conversations.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much.
Is it worth on that, Cliff, maybe when somebody, say if a new tenant comes in, sort of have a questionnaire when they're coming in and just say, look, what are you looking for? What's, they could ask what happened before, why have they moved, just something that could really help Raquel's business, I suppose.
Yeah, any information you can get from tenants or from investors, from anywhere, would be helpful, because at some point, somewhere along the line, say there'll be a golden nugget at the end of that conversation that you can use. So it's always worth a conversation.
Thank you ever so much then, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else, any questions? No, everyone seems bamboozled by the figures.
Just more food for thought.
But look, I know that was very detailed. I think it's a good idea to maybe send you what we went through so you can have a look through. But obviously, go back and watch the video and click through those slides again, because they like we said, like Raquel was saying, there's very simple ways of changing things. It's working out how it works best for you. But I don't know, Mel, if you have a questionnaire for all clients, and obviously you have different, you've got different payer sizes. So obviously,
exactly.
I take it a lot of people as well go for the middle size of you, because they might say the big one's too big for us, but we'll have a big enough one to last for a few weeks and things like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we do talk about sizing when the customer makes an inquiry or a booking, but I don't really push it that much. Not for any reason apart from remembering, really, or I haven't really given it that much thought. but that is definitely something that I could quite easily sell, because we always give full instructions on how to decant any leftovers, how to store it, and how to it safely. It'd be quite easy to say, well, why don't you go for the next size up, because then you'll have some meals for, another time.
Yeah. Do you provide them with any sort of storage packaging, or sort of a questionnaire of how they found the meal?
Yeah, no, we don't, but we could do quite easily. So
I think for you, if you're going to, because what you're doing is, so what, so Mel's thing is, she makes paella, and then she sends the pan to the place that's the people that are eating it, and then they pick it back up. So the actual pan is, so you're physically going and dropping off and picking it up. So I don't know why, I think it's a good idea to maybe get yourself a questionnaire for each time, or ask these people, just, get maybe a QR code that they can scan on the back of the pan or something. I don't know, something simple that they can fill in and just say how they enjoyed it, and give you some feedback and simple ways to change if needed.
I'm actually working on a questionnaire at the moment. So for my customers, to try and get a lot of that detail out, because at the moment I'm kind of not making assumptions. I've got a good feel for what my customers are looking for, but it can always, a survey can always throw up some surprises that you've never thought of or never considered. So that's exactly what I'm working on at the moment, is doing a survey for all of my existing customers to try and find out a little bit more about what more could I help them with, what more could I provide them, and if there's any other feedback they would like to give me. But I really like what you've just mentioned there about going up a size. I don't really do that, and I could easily do that with what I have at the moment, because I talk about, as I say, storage instructions for any leftovers. So why not, tag on to the back of that? How easy would that be? Or go up a size and, have some meals, and I can provide you with the storage containers as well.
Or even finding out sort of that size, how many people are in the family, how many people eat it, etc. It's just work, because then you can work out for next time what they might want. I don't know if you sort of factor in as well. You could maybe say something like, if you had leftovers of 6 meals or 6 of you, it costs this much per person. Like, I don't know, something that could factor in that they're cutting their weekly spend or something. I don't know whether that's something of interest, or whether that sounds any good, Cliff. You probably know whether. I'm making it too difficult.
No, any of these options would be worth testing and measuring. Some will work, some won't work, but at least you've tested it. But also, what I found to be incredibly powerful is that obviously we've gone through these numbers now from Alex's demo company, but what's really powerful is to see your own numbers in that. As soon as you see that, you start to get ideas. Right now, all these numbers are just numbers. They're meaningless to you, but having your own numbers in there becomes very powerful. And as soon as you see that happening, you start to get really good ideas, and your thought process tend to take over. So I think, if you're happy just to provide the information for people here, just so they can see their numbers in action.
That'd be a good idea.
What their companies actually look like in those tables.
Definitely.
We could just go through sort of percentage increases and decreases to overheads, etc. Have a quick check where it does go. And I suppose like Cliff said, you might just look at revenue and say, right, 4% up there is actually not going to lose customers, but it's going to increase my bank balance. Then why not? Then you can worry about everything else.
No, definitely. No, that'd be great.
Can I also suggest something as a person who actually eats a lot of paella, because I come from that land? Because one of the things about eating paella is the whole thing about eating together, and paella is normally eaten with loads of other side dishes aside, like with loads of other little tapas. So is it not possible for you to offer the tapas so that you provide the full home experience, if that makes sense?
Thank you, Raquel. Yeah, we already do. We offer tapas. We call them pinchos because we're from northern Spain, and we offer desserts as well. So we do the whole package.
Oh, that's good then. Thank you.
So Mel, what do you actually sell?
What do I sell most of? Paella. That is my number one bestseller, and there's a lot of reasons behind that, because it's very hard to get it over here unless you go into a restaurant in South London, and when you do, you can't order it for one person. It's like Raquel said, it's really a communal food, and they make it. It's very time consuming to make. So the paellas are our best sellers. We're really renowned for that. And the delivery service is obviously nobody else does it.
So in effect, I think from what you're saying is you don't actually, your product happens to be paella, but you don't sell that. You sell parties, you sell community, you sell events effectively, and paella happens to be the central product that services that. So you actually are providing a community, a social event. That's what you're selling, and then you're using paella as the vehicle to do that.
Yeah.
So you focus on the element on your marketing, advertising, saying you want a great event, you want to get people around the table, want to have great conversation, great food. I can provide that.
Yeah.
Just a slight slant on what you do, but still providing paella, but a slightly different tangent.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose at the same time, you're not limiting yourself to just paella. I suppose they're kind of saying, well, there's everything as an option.
Yeah, absolutely.
But can you not provide the paella cooked at home? I mean, I don't know whether that's possible, but can you not come to my house and teach me how to do it?
So Raquel, we used to do that. That's exactly what we used to do before the pandemic. But we used to actually 90% of our business was on-site catering and 10% delivery. Now it's completely reversed, and in actual fact, we've stopped offering on-site. And the reason behind that is I can't cope with offering delivery and on-site. The demand for my delivery is very high because it's very unique, and it's proven to be incredibly difficult to offer both. And if I offer on site, it does mean that my delivery suffers because I can't do both in one day. The the on-site option usually takes up a huge amount of time and energy, which means I then can't offer a delivery option unless I, expand hugely, which is an option. So we've kind of said we're not offering on-site anymore. We will only offer delivery because that's what we can cope with right now. But it's certainly something that we can potentially look at in the future. But the delivery option is far more profitable, far easier and more manageable for us, which is why we've gone down that route. Now, I do offer, I wouldn't say no to a private party, but I don't want to, at this stage, after everything we've been through, I don't want to offer on-site catering for large parties. So I can do like a small private party, that's no problem at all. And I also offer paella tuition, which I absolutely love. I love teaching people how to cook it.
No, do you do anything like Zoom classes for that?
No, I haven't. I have thought about it. It's one of those things that, it's on my list of things to do. I had full intentions of doing that at the beginning of this year. I was all set up to get it all sorted out. Sadly, my father passed away unexpectedly in January, and everything just wow. Yeah. As you can imagine, everything went to pot. So I never actually did it, but those were my plans. Absolutely, those were my plans, but it didn't happen.
I would have a look at it because obviously you can then, no one has to leave their home. You don't have to leave your place of business. You're expanding the number of contacts, etc. So and you can charge for it. So
yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say to you. The other thing I was going to say to you, I cook paella alongside with my mum for 2 hours on the phone. So I can tell you that definitely works.
Yeah.
And obviously it's my mum and I spend 2 hours, but if there was a service where I don't have to embarrass myself and tell my mum, Mama, I forgot again. Can you just help me? then I think it would be really good. So it's definitely something that I can see future on. But can you please just put your details on the chat or send them to me through David, please?
Yes,
I'd
I will
definitely like
do.
to talk to you outside of this.
I'll put you in contact, Raquel.
Thank you so much, Raquel. That's really sweet of you, and thank you, because you know what, just talking about that is just it's as I say, it was something I was definitely set up to do last January, and it didn't happen, and it's kind of ignited my passion around that again, just talking about it, because I love teaching people how to cook it. I really do. Maybe I need to really get that back on my list and at the top again. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. And don't forget, Mel, you can teach people and they might get to the point where this is just too difficult and then they just buy it from you as well.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
you get money both ways.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So thanks for all the questions, guys. Thanks for your input. I think we'll wrap up this week. Let's go back to my slides. Okay. So I just want to show, right. So we've now completed weeks 1 to 8. Next week, we're going to go on to week session, which is going to look at the customer acquisition. And we're going to have Daniel Plowright again from Inquire 3. He'll run the slides, go through some useful advice for you. And just going to set you some more homework if you've got some time, please. So how many new customers did you acquire? Do you know this? If not, we can help you. Where did they come from? And how much did you invest in total? See if you can work this out and set targets for next year. But like I said, any queries, just let me know. And thank you from me again, guys. And thank you for your input. And thanks, Cliff, Steve, popping along as well.